Part 166. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1651. Huh? This is. 100 years have passed since the great universe world, but it has not actually lasted that long outside. During this period, Zuyun also went to see the big hand outside the world of Dazhu. Although the chaotic power had dissipated, the world of Dazhu was brought out of inertia and still maintained its original speed. Later, Zuyun simply stopped watching. Zuyun originally thought that after coming back, he would still be in that fairyland. But he didn't expect that the location he was in would also become a deserted land, and the space would become extremely small. Looking up at Huanyu, he keenly discovered that this piece of debris was flying towards the north. In the universe, it may not be possible to determine the specific direction, but in the fairyland, it is still possible, with the stars as reference. Is the demon dead? Zuyun looked around and found some messy demonic energy, thinking that this should be the case. Looking again, he frowned again. He spread his immortal consciousness and soon enveloped the entire fragment. There was no Mengwei and Sidu Qing Chen. In other words, they are separated. What should I do? If it flies in the same direction, it's okay, but if it flies in another direction, the fairy world is so big, I'm afraid it will be difficult to find. Zuyun couldn't help but worry about Mengwei. Mengwei's demonic body is not fully developed yet, he only has one pair of demonic eyes, and the most advantageous demonic knife is still in his hand. It can be said that there is no power to fight. At most, I can only deal with Xianxia. This is with Sidu Qingchen's help. No, we have to find Wei. But the problem is, the fairy world is so big, where can we find it? The key is, I don't have any clues yet. Zuyun frowned deeply. There was nothing he could do to search for it like this. How about a trip to Luanzingai? Just as he was thinking this, Zuyun suddenly noticed that the speed of flying in the fairyland had slowed down. Immortal consciousness had just spread, and there was no other living being in the fragment of fairyland he was in except him. There is no point in staying, so why not leave first and see where you are in Wonderland? Zuyun stood up and rushed straight out of the fairyland space. After entering Huanyu, his eyes suddenly condensed. The feeling Huanyu gave him was completely different. Could it be that they changed to another fairyland? Then how far did this fairyland fragment fly? Can it fly out of the southern fairyland? The self-destruction formation of this high-grade fairy crystal is too powerful, right? Zuyun has never been to other immortal realms, but he can discover them just by feeling. He couldn't help but cast his eyes on the fairyland fragment again. After flying out, the fragment looked like a shooting star in his eyes, dragging a long light tail. After such a long flight, the castration gradually disappeared, and the size of the fairyland also became smaller. Until, this piece of debris suddenly hit something, making a loud noise and bursting out with a burst of light. Boom! While the light was dazzling, the fairyland was completely shattered into powder. A huge impact turbulence actually caused ripples in the world. It's like a formation. Here. Zuyun was shocked and said to himself, could it be that this is the Chinese immortal realm? A semi-transparent shield was looming, reminding me that he was heading north from the southern immortal realm. If he was due south, he would most likely pass through the Chinese immortal realm. Seeing a gap in the protective shield, Zuyun suddenly got into the gap. But not long after entering, before Zuyun had time to take stock of the situation in this fairyland, several rays of golden light flew towards the gap. Beyond the speed, it passed by in a blink of an eye. Zuyun secretly thought that something was wrong. Didn't it mean that the immortal emperor of the Chinese immortal domain was crazy and no one would care about him anymore? Why did someone rush here the moment this news came out? Zuyun didn't dare to stay here. he had no way of knowing what the attitude of these people was. And judging from the speed at which they were flying, they were probably at least immortal Luo Tian. Although he has broken through a small realm and reached the realm of earthly immortals, where he can fight less against many, it is tantamount to seeking death. Simply, he spotted a fairy land not far away and flew over. As soon as he moved, a chi machine locked him directly. "Is this your fault?" a majestic voice sounded in Zhu Yun's mind. Zhu Yun immediately stopped, not daring to take a breath, and said quickly, "Xianxia, it was not the villain who did it. The villain happened to be passing by here and was also attracted by the movement. Yeming, he is just a little earthly immortal, you are too careful." Another voice sounded, helping Zhu Yun out of the siege. Zhu Yun breathed a sigh of relief and then heard a third voice, "It seems to be a fragment of the fairy land that was struck by the collision. It's not the southern fairy land that attacked." "That's good." The three Lucian immortals all turned their attention to Zhu Yun. "Are you not from our Chinese immortal realm?" Yeming stared at Zhu Yun and said. "Back to the upper immortal realm, the villain came from the southern immortal realm and wanted to go to the northern immortal realm. When he was passing by the Chinese immortal realm, he saw a fragment of the fairy land that suddenly bumped into it, and then he felt an inexplicable attraction. The villain couldn't escape, so he was sucked in. Southern fairyland." Hearing Zhu Yun mention it, Yeming frowned, then suddenly stretched out his hand and placed it between Zhu Yun's eyebrows. The speed was so fast that before he could react, Yeming had already retracted his hand. "It's not a demon from outside the domain, it's okay." It seemed to be said to Zhu Yun, but also to the two people behind him. "Sir, what's the matter with the demon from outside the domain?" Zhu Yun asked carefully, thinking that since he had entered the central fairyland, he should learn more about the situation first. "It seems that it's easy to get in, but it's not that easy to get out. The previous gaps have been closed. You come from the southern fairyland, don't you know the demon from outside the domain? Boy, are you a fake southerner?" A Lucian immortal after Yeming said lightly. Reply to the immortal, Zhu Yun said hurriedly, "I just ascended to the fairyland not long ago, and finally cultivated to the earth fairyland, so I don't know much about the situation in the fairyland. I'm lucky, I ascended to the southern fairyland and cultivated to the earth fairyland." Another Lucian immortal raised his eyebrows, and said with a smile, not knowing what his attitude was. Zhu Yun thought to himself, it seems that the situation in the southern fairyland is not very good. It's also fortunate that he didn't plan to stay there. However, if the news of Nangong Tianli's death spreads, will the southern fairyland be in even more chaos? This thought only flashed through his mind, and Zhu Yun had no time to think about it. The three Lucian immortals suddenly left without saying a word to Zhu Yun. "Are you so relieved that they left? In other words, the central fairyland can only be entered but not left. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills." Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1652. Since no one cares, then I will continue to visit that fairyland. Zhu Yun naturally would not chase those three people. He was still a little nervous to be alone with immortal Luo Tian. Moreover, judging from their reactions, it seems that it is difficult to leave the Chinese fairyland. It is better to go to the fairyland to inquire about the situation. This is bad news, but there is also good news. Even with such precautions, it would be relatively safer to come to the Chinese fairyland. At least there is no influence from evil immortals or extraterrestrial demons. While Zhu Yun was flying towards the fairyland, these three Lucian immortals were also standing in a fairyland. This fairyland is extremely small, even smaller than the fragment of fairyland Zhu Yun was in before. Moreover, it is completely desolate and hidden in the world. If you don't use your immortal sense to explore it, you can't find it at all. "Sir, it's just a piece of fairyland that hit me, nothing else." At this time, Yaming bowed and said to an immortal in front of him, and this immortal turned out to be in the immortal king realm. Has it been found out? The immortal lord said calmly. I found out that there was still the aura of fragments of the fairy land at that time, and a little bit of the power of the fairy land was circulating. It should be that a piece of the great fairy land was broken. Yaming looked solemn. On the side, another person added, Sir, in addition to this, there is also a real immortal from the southern immortal realm who has entered the immortal realm. After investigating the immortal consciousness, he is a normal true immortal and has no influence, so we let him go. The immortal lord nodded, and then said, the southern immortal territory is not at peace. Recently, I have received news that the western immortal territory is also about to make a move. Ximan Yuanqing is very scheming and may have already planned to annex the southern immortal territory. Thoughts? It's better to be careful. Maybe he is almost ready after being dormant for so many years. After annexing the southern immortal territory, he will attack our Chinese immortal territory. Now the immortal emperor is still locked up. Your Majesty, then It's not your turn to worry about these things. Guard the Chinese immortal territory and wait for the immortal queen to come back. The immortal queen has gone to find the secret method. When the time comes, let the immortal emperor wake up, let alone Ximan Yuanqing, plus Nangang Tianli, no problem. The immortal lord waved his hand, and Yaming and the others left with understanding and flew away from this fairy land. Until in the void, another person said with slight dissatisfaction, Brother Ming, the Chinese immortal territory is the land of our Ye family, why? Don't talk nonsense. Lord Fenjiun and Thunder is a close friend of the immortal emperor. If he hadn't been at the border of the immortal territory, our immortal territory would have been cannibalized long ago. Yes, Lord Fenjiun and Thunder controls the four laws. Anyone who wants to attack the immortal realm must think carefully first. With the great lord sitting here, our Chinese immortal territory can live peacefully in these years. But now, the situation in the immortal territory is getting more and more tense, and we are bordering the southern immortal territory here, so we still need to cheer up. Fairy friend, should I go to the hospital or stay in a hotel? As soon as Zuyun landed, several immortals dressed as waiters swarmed up and surrounded Zuyun tightly. Zuyun was also speechless, which he had not expected. After all, he specifically chose to land outside the city in this fairy land, and then chose to enter the city. But he didn't expect that so many immortals suddenly appeared next to him. There are many golden immortal realms among them. These days, are all the golden immortals working as waiters? And to earn fairy crystals? How outrageous! I don't want to go to the hotel, and I don't want to stay in a hotel. I just want to go in and have a look. Zuyun refused one by one. Fellow immortal, please do so. The waiters were not angry, but gave Zuyun directions. Zuyun repeatedly handed over his hand, but was very surprised in his heart. Didn't you say that Ye Yang was crazy? Or because of Qiu Linjian? This fairy land is not big, it is very close to the border, and it is far away from the immortal emperor's mansion. But the attitudes of these waiters are too good, right? The Chinese immortal territory has always been well managed. Even if Ye Yang is in a coma, the immortal territory will act according to the rules. Or is there another capable person who has taken over the position of immortal emperor? For example, Ye Yuan? Zuyun thinks it's impossible. Calculating according to the time of the fairy world, even if Ye Yuan came to the fairy world, it would not be long, right? Even though he has the Thunder Immortal Hammer, his improvement in the realm of immortality relies more on his understanding of the laws. His strength has improved quickly, but Ye Yuan can't reach Immortal Lord, right? Zuyun couldn't understand, but didn't think much about it. The current purpose is to inquire about the situation and then leave the Chinese fairy land. The protection here is so strict, even if Meng Wei comes, it may not be so easy to get in. It's better to go to other fairy lands to find it. According to the previous position, the fairy land fragments may scatter in all directions, but those heading north will definitely be stopped by the shield of the Chinese fairy land. Then there are only three directions to look for: east, west, and the southern fairy land further south. He never thought that Menghui and Situ Qingchen would eventually choose to go to the far north and wait for Zuyun in Purgatory Mountain. After entering the city, Zuyun looked left and right, curiously observing the living conditions of the immortals here. There are countless immortals, and from time to time, you can also see the Luo Jingxian. However, immortal Luo Tian cannot be seen. He must have important positions in the Chinese immortal domain. You know, when he, a true immortal, accidentally broke into the Chinese immortal realm, 3 Lucian immortals rushed to him. And immortal Luo Tian is second only to the immortal lord. Maybe in the entire immortal world, apart from the immortal emperor, there are only 2 immortal lords. But the number of Lucian immortals will not exceed 3 digits at most. Therefore, Lucian immortals are the top of the entire fairy world. The backbone is naturally the Luo Jingxian. Situ Qingchen told Zuyun about this matter. But here, he can see many Luo Jingxians, which makes Zuyun have a certain judgment on the central fairy land. This is a safe place. Even if Yang is really unconscious, he must be able to govern it well. Zuyun nodded slightly in his heart and walked into a restaurant casually. There are still hundreds of low-grade fairy crystals in the storage bag. He didn't know the price here, so he called the waiter. "Fairy friend, what do you need? Our store is cheap and good. Do you have any special fairy food and fairy wine?" Zuyun asked with a smile. The fairy wine and fairy food given by Situ Qingchen at that time stabilized his realm a lot. He just broke through the true fairy. Although he has been in the world of the universe for 100 years, he has been comprehending the laws of time and space, which did not stabilize his realm. Perhaps, this has something to do with it. Of course there is. The waiter flashed with golden light, and conjured up a menu and placed it on the table. "Fellow immortals, choose according to the price." Zuyun took a look and felt strange. In the previous shops he had encountered, he basically had to guess how much spiritual stones he spent. It was rare to see the prices clearly marked here. But this detail reflects the difference of the central immortal realm. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1653. Zuyun took a look, and based on the number of immortal crystals on his body, if this was the case in all the Chinese immortal realms, he should be able to stay for a long time. But the problem is that he came to this fairy land to find out how to leave. After ordering a few dishes at random, he asks Yang the waiter, "Fellow immortal, I want to ask Jing Jing, how to leave the Chinese immortal realm. I want to go to the northern immortal realm." The Chinese immortal territory borders the 4 realms. The reason why Zuyun did not mention returning to the southern immortal territory or the other 2 realms still had his own considerations. What are you going to do in the northern immortal realm? The immortal realm is in such chaos now. If you go out, your life or death will be uncertain. The waiter looked at Zuyun with eyes full of incomprehension. "Don't you want to go out and have a try?" Zuyun smiled and spoke vaguely. "Then you asked the right person." The waiter obviously would not deliberately embarrass Zuyun on this kind of issue. He lowered his voice, pointed to a table of guests not far away, and said, "They recently said they were going to in the northern immortal realm. You can ask them if there is any way. But, immortal friends, please don't ask this kind of question next time near the border of the immortal realm, so as not to cause trouble." Zuyun asked strangely, "Why, are you not allowed to leave the immortal realm?" "Not really, The waiter shook his head and said, "The main thing is that we are close to the border, and there is no guarantee that spies from other immortal realms will not sneak in. If it is easier to get in and out, wouldn't our Chinese immortal realm also be in chaos?" "I see." Zuyun nodded. Perhaps the rumors that the Chinese immortal territory was in chaos were probably also spread by the so-called spies. If you want to go deeper into the Chinese immortal realm, I'm afraid it will be quite difficult. Thinking of the Deluo golden immortals he met before, Zuyun also had some vague guesses about the Chinese immortal domain. Ye Yang may be crazy, but there is absolutely no chaos in the Chinese immortal realm. Then they deliberately let the outside world spread wrong information, right? Are you luring a snake out of its hole? Bringing out evil immortals, extraterrestrial demons, or other strange movements of immortal emperors. The immortal emperor of the West sent people out to deceive and find people to mine for him, even using addictive substances such as Yanhan powder. Needless to say, there is no need to say more about the southern immortal realm. The current situation in the eastern fairyland is unknown. But in the northern immortal realm, Sidu Qingchen also said something had changed. This fairy world. It's really a mess. Zuyun sighed and looked towards the side where the waiter was talking. I saw that these were all descendants. There were 5 people in total, 2 men and 3 women. 2 of the men are golden immortals, but the 3 women are just like him, only in the realm of true immortals. Can we find a way to leave the Chinese immortal realm in such a state? The Chinese immortal realm must have used some supreme immortal method to lay down such a huge barrier. If the fragments of the fairy land he was in hadn't collided with each other, he might not have been able to tell. But what would happen if an ordinary immortal flew here? Zuyun was not sure either. At the moment, it is better to leave the Chinese immortal realm first and find Mengwei and Sidu Qingchen as soon as possible. After thinking about it, Zuyun called the waiter again and ordered a pot of good wine. After the wine was served, he walked over with the cup and the wine bottle. Before the person got close, he was greeted by 5 vigilant eyes. 5 immortal friends, Zuyun said with a smile on his face, lowering his voice, I heard that some of you are going to the northern immortal realm, and I want to go with you. Is it possible? After saying that, he took the initiative to serve them wine without waiting for these people to respond. This immortal wine is the best wine in the restaurant. Just 10 immortal crystals are needed, which is definitely not something that ordinary immortals can afford. Fellow immortal, we have something to do when we go to the northern immortal realm, and we are not just here for fun. One of the men said expressionlessly, his words were ambiguous, and he neither agreed nor refused. And after he finished speaking, he drank up the wine poured by Zuyun in one gulp. Zuyun suddenly understood that he could take him with him, but there must be certain benefits and he must listen to them on the way. He pondered for a moment and said, of course it's okay. I left the Chinese immortal realm just because I wanted to see the world. After staying in the Chinese immortal realm for a long time, I will inevitably get a little bored. The other man smiled and said, that's true, these 3 fairies think so too. Zuyun was stunned and immediately understood what they meant. Thinking about it, these 2 men were the ones who had the ability to leave, and the other 3 fairies were probably going to the northern fairyland to find them. No wonder they are in different realms, but they can come together. That couldn't be better, Zuyun said with his hands raised to the 3 fairies. I, Zuyun, have met 3 fairies. Well, you're welcome. Indeed, it's just along the way. When we arrive in the northern immortal realm, we will go on different paths, and there is no need to know our respective names. The 3 of them had a clear attitude, keep strangers away. Zuyun didn't care either. He didn't have to go to the northern fairyland, but he wanted to see how they could leave. 10,000 formations cannot escape the laws of space. If we can get some clues from their method of breaking through the space formation, then it won't be a problem to come to the Chinese immortal territory again, or take the road to the southern immortal territory. Zuyun still understands this principle when sharpening a knife and chopping firewood without missing a beat. In that case, then hand over 100 immortal crystals. The man who spoke at first opened his mouth and asked Zuyun for it. This was unexpected. Lu Chen was stunned for a moment, but he still took it out and placed the 100 fairy crystals on the table. I have only 2 rules for going to the northern fairyland. Please tell me, my friend. First, you must follow our arrangements along the way and don't ask about anything. If you cause any trouble, don't blame us for being rude. Don't worry, my friend. Zuyun quickly agreed, and then said, what about the second rule? Second, we are only responsible for sending you to the northern fairyland. After leaving the central fairyland, you and I will have nothing to do with each other. Zuyun smiled and said, I just want to go out and see the world, don't worry, my friend. Another golden fairy still smiled and said, of course, if you want to find a good job, it's not impossible. The northern fairyland is safer and more stable than other fairylands, and there are more places to earn fairy crystals. As long as you get some fairy crystals, we have a way. Zuyun pretended to be in deep thought, but glanced at the other 3 fairies from the corner of his eye. When he mentioned this, a hint of light flashed in their eyes, and they couldn't help but understand. It is estimated that these 3 fairies not only want to go out and make money, but also want to earn fairy crystals. In fact, the prices in the central fairyland are so low that it is estimated that what they earn is not enough for them to spend, so how can they have extra money for cultivation? I didn't expect that the 2 fairy friends have such a wide range of roads. Let me think about it when we are on the road. Zuyun did not agree immediately, in fact, it was convenient to inquire about more information at that time. If he was serious about introducing jobs to these 3 female fairies, it would be fine. But if he had ulterior motives, it would be hard to say. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzwan Xianxia. Chapter 1654. Zuyun planned to follow and see the situation before talking. The 2 Xianxian also introduced themselves. The man with a stern face has a surname of Wen, and his last name has the character Xiao. The other person who always smiles is also named Wen. Zuyun Duo asked if they were brothers of the same country, but received no response. But this is not an important question. After having enough wine and food, Wen Xiao said, it's almost time, it's time to go. The 3 women all stood up and stood side by side behind Wen Chuo. Seeing this, Zuyun also lined up together. One of the women frowned and scolded in a low voice, stand in front of us. Zuyun was puzzled, but he didn't say much, but it was this look that aroused the dissatisfaction of another woman. Do you want to stand behind us? Do you want to peek at us? Zuyun immediately became happy. This was not the mortal world in the lower world, but the fairy world. And even in the lower realm, Zuyun has seen countless beautiful women. Let's forget about Meng Wei for now. Even Sun Qinyang is not comparable to them. I'm standing in front, how can I peek? Zuyun showed a playful smile. Who knows what laws you practice, what if you can do it? Another woman said. Zuyun shrugged and didn't bother to argue with them. He simply took a step forward and stood with the 2 Xianxian. Humph, who dares to covet us? Yes, he probably saw that we wanted to leave the Chinese immortal realm and wanted to get close to us. Humph, stay away from him. If this is still the case in the northern immortal realm, we will kill him. He is just a true immortal. Zuyun only felt funny when he heard that the 3 women obviously lowered their voices, but deliberately said it for him to hear. But he didn't take it to heart. They are also true immortals, but they don't know where they get the confidence to say that they are true immortals and can only use 3 words. It's interesting to think about it, and I think it must be that the Chinese immortal realm is too peaceful, which makes them have such an illusion. Maybe after going to the northern immortal realm, I can learn a good lesson about what it means to have a sinister human heart. Originally, Zuyun was still thinking about asking them to pay attention and be careful after leaving the Chinese immortal realm. But now, this thought is gone. Please be quiet, it's time for us to leave this fairyland. After leaving the restaurant, Wen Xiao saw that the three women seemed to be giving up, so he scolded them in a low voice. The three of them immediately shut up. Seeing Zuyun looking at them with a playful smile, they couldn't help but glare back fiercely, but they didn't dare to say anything more. 2. These two people are golden immortals, and they are not someone that the three real immortals can mess with. You really look down on others based on their realm. Zuyun stopped talking and saw Ji Wenchuo take out a small ferry boat. You guys go up and wait, it will be faster. Hearing this, Zuyun rushed up first and sat at the bow of the boat. The other three women were slightly stunned. They wanted to say that Zuyun occupied a good position and affected their view of Huanyu, but then they remembered Ling Xiao's scolding. It was swallowed back into the stomach abruptly, turning into a belly of resentment. After getting on the immortal boat, the three women crowded into a row, and finally two golden immortals got on. Before the ferry boat started, Zuyun felt a familiar breath of fairy power. He frowned, and the aura disappeared instantly. Mid-grade immortal crystal. Zuyun remembered very clearly that the middle-grade immortal crystal taken out of Sidu Kingchen's pendant space at that time had this kind of aura. He had secret doubts in his heart, and felt that something was wrong with this matter. Maybe it was as simple as taking people out of the Chinese immortal realm. He had paid 100 immortal crystals as a fee before. According to the normal exchange ratio, one medium-grade fairy crystal can indeed be exchanged for 100 low-grade fairy crystals. But in the actual process, in terms of the golden fairy realm, the value of the middle-grade fairy crystal to their cultivation is far greater than 100 pieces of low-grade fairy crystal. But Wen Xiao did not hesitate to use the fairy crystal as the energy source of the fairy boat. It seems that things are not that simple anymore, there must be a monster when things go wrong, but the key to this is, what exactly is it? Zuyun secretly paid attention. He was not worried about his safety. Even if there were 2 golden immortals and 3 female immortals, he might not take it to heart. Just be afraid, this time you are not going to the northern fairyland and selling them out on the way. Thinking of this, Zuyun was suddenly excited. Sell? Could it be that people were sold to work as miners? Recalling his experience as a miner, he and Mengwei had gone through deception and abduction, using all possible means. The promise made at that time was that they would be satisfied with all the low-grade immortal crystals they dug up, and hundreds of immortals were deceived. And when the ferry boat set off, he even made bold words and publicized it at the dock in front of everyone, thus deceiving many people. It wasn't until the ferry boat flew into the world that they revealed their true colors. Sit tight. While Zuyun was still thinking, the ferry boat suddenly jumped out of the fairyland, flew into the world, circled in a circle, and then headed towards the north. Wow, this is Huanyu. This is the Huanyu of the Chinese immortal domain. I heard that the immortal crystals from the outside world are more profitable. Yes, I've heard about it too, so I'll inform you of this good thing as soon as possible. Hearing the whispers of these 3 people, Zuyun immediately confirmed in his heart that they must have been tricked out. But did they find Wen Xiao and the others after being tricked, or did they hear the news that Wen Xiao and the others had let them out? Zuyun did not think too much. No matter which one it was, he had already expected that these 3 women would not go back. Listening to their conversation, he did not experience the suffering of others, so there was no need for him to persuade them to be kind. Let everything go with fate. Zuyun closed his eyes to rest, but he never thought that this would become the focus of the 3 women's speech. Humph, sitting in the first row without looking at the scenery and closing your eyes, it's really a waste of this seat. That's right, we all agreed that I would sit in the front. Anyway, I have thought about it. When I get to the northern fairyland and get off the ferry boat, the first thing I will do is to teach him a lesson. Zuyun listened and shook his head secretly, and no longer paid attention to them. He began to comprehend the laws of time and space on his own. The immortal boat was indeed very fast, much faster than the one Zuyun had taken last time. Perhaps it was because of the small size of the immortal boat, or because it used medium-grade immortal crystals as energy. In short, after 1 day and 1 night, they had already passed through the central immortal realm and arrived at the border of the northern immortal realm. Everyone sit tight, we will fly out of the central immortal realm. Suddenly, Wen Xiao's voice sounded, and everyone was shocked and quickly alerted, even Zuyun opened his eyes. He sat in the first row, just to see how to get out of the central immortal realm, to see if he could find the array pattern of this immortal array or something else. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 1655. It was not as Zuyun imagined. The immortal boat flew out of the central immortal realm without any delay and appeared in the northern immortal realm. Feeling the different breadth of the universe, Zuyun knew clearly that there must be something mysterious about this immortal boat, so he did not alarm the barrier of the central immortal realm. But was it because of the immortal boat, or was it because of the use of the middle-grade immortal crystal? Seeing that the immortal boat did not slow down, but instead circled and flew towards the west, Zuyun could not help but keep a little bit of his attention, quietly used the divine eye technique, and looked at the place where the immortal crystal was placed. I saw that the immortal power of that middle-grade immortal crystal had been consumed by more than half. At the same time, around the immortal crystal, there were also complex array patterns, which continuously extracted the immortal power from it and acted on the immortal boat. No, this is not a simple gravitational array, it seems to have also acted on the immortal power in other places. The array can be said to be an extremely extraordinary way among the 3,000 great ways. Starting from the lower realm, the array is in accordance with the law. In the lower realm, what is followed is the way of heaven, and in the upper realm, what is followed is the way of immortals. And in essence, it is to follow the rules. So, he can see the problem at the core of this formation. Look at these immortal powers. In addition to controlling the immortal boat, where is a part of it going? It was agreed that they would leave it alone when they reached the northern immortal realm, but the immortal boat did not stop, and even the speed did not slow down, which explained the problem. Zuyun's previous 2 guesses were undoubtedly more inclined to the latter. Using the divine eye technique, Zuyun easily found that there were several array patterns that separated after being entangled around the immortal crystal. Among them, half of them were divided to the stern of the boat, and the other half were divided to the bow of the boat, which was where he was sitting. Could it be that when this immortal boat was refined, the method of breaking the formation was already placed? Zuyun remembered the formation-breaking hammer he had obtained in the lower realm. In addition to being a talisman with a limited number of uses, it can really break thousands of formations. As long as you knock on the formation wall, you can leave something behind. Zuyun is now also guessing whether this boat bow has the same effect as the formation-breaking hammer. With the help of the divine eye technique, Zuyun clearly saw the array pattern running under the bow of the boat. In the array pattern, immortal power was flowing. He focused his eyes and immediately saw the mystery. It seems to be somewhat similar to the sharpness of the golden spiritual power. Could it be that this immortal boat broke through the surface, and directly passed through the array wall? But why didn't it cause any movement? If so, wouldn't it be much easier for me to enter and exit the central immortal realm? After watching it again and again, Zuyun couldn't see any other clues, so he had to give up. It might be okay to try again when he returned to the central immortal realm. Looking up at the distance, many immortal realms were within sight. But the immortal boat still had no intention of stopping, and he was more and more certain that the 2 golden immortals had bad intentions. He pondered for a moment, and suddenly shouted, "My two immortal friends, I suddenly remembered that I have something to do in the north. Why don't we stop here and let me leave on my own?" At this time, they were heading west. Zuyun suddenly mentioned the north, which naturally aroused the dissatisfaction of the two golden immortals. Wenchuo smiled with a dagger hidden in his heart. His expression was the same as before, but his tone became a little more yin and yang. "My immortal friend Zhu, if this immortal boat stops, the middle-grade immortal crystal will be useless. We haven't met the place where the three immortals want to go yet." "So that's the case," Zuyun looked suddenly enlightened, but changed the subject and said, "Then how about I jump from the immortal boat into the world myself?" "My immortal friend Zhu, this is not appropriate, right? What if I get hurt?" Wenchuo obviously refused, and he refused bluntly, and it seemed like he was considering Zuyun. "If I get hurt, it's my own fault." Zuyun raised his eyebrows and smiled, but he secretly used the chaotic immortal power in his hands. As long as the other party had a slight possibility of wanting to attack, he would attack immediately. "This is not good," Wenchuo frowned and said, "we are in this business. If it is reported that a customer is injured, it will damage our reputation. How about this, we send these three fairies to their destination first, and then send you back to where you want to go." This was said very skillfully, and it was to pull the three women on the same line. One of the female cultivators said proudly, "Yes, you are in such a hurry to go, is it possible that you will not live long?" "That's right, you can't live for a few hours or something." "He, when Xianxia said so, if you still refuse, it's simply not giving face. Who do you think you are?" Hearing the three women talking to each other, Zuyun also shook his head in his heart. He was really sold by someone, and he was still counting money for others. Stupid woman. Only in the northern fairyland can they practice to become true immortals safely? If they were in the southern fairyland, I'm afraid they would be just immortals for their whole lives. No, there is even a possibility that they will be captured and enslaved. Since when Xianxia said so, I have no choice but to obey." Zuyun bowed slightly, seemingly compromising, but in the moment when Wenchuo was distracted, he suddenly blasted out a palm. Chaos palm. The majestic chaos immortal power, at such a close distance, blasted towards the defenseless Wenchuo. "Boy, how dare you!" The immortal boat was only this big, and this palm power not only covered Wenchuo completely, but also had the remaining power to affect Wenxiao, who was driving the immortal boat. Wenchuo was caught off guard and was immediately blasted away, and spit out a mouthful of immortal blood. However, he blocked most of the chaos immortal power, but Wenxiao behind him was not injured, and he counterattacked very quickly. He supported Wenchuo's back with one hand, and a fairy sword appeared out of thin air with the other hand, stabbing towards Zuyun. "Humph! A mere golden immortal, do you really think I'm afraid?" Zuyun was full of disdain and slapped out again. It was still the Chaos Palm. The Chaos Palm's power covered a wide range. In such a small space, there was no need to consider that the other party could dodge. What he didn't expect was that Wenxiao was also extremely cruel. Seeing Zuyun using the same old trick again, he actually used the injured Wenchuo as a meat shield. And the fairy sword in his hand flew straight out from behind the meat shield and attacked Zuyun's eyebrows. "Boy, die!" Wenxiao's face was ferocious, surprised at Zuyun's decisiveness, and also surprised that his sudden attack could seriously injure Wenchuo. But he didn't take him seriously. A mere true immortal. So audacious. The light of the immortal sword was unstoppable, passing through the mighty palm power without any delay. Just as the sword was about to pierce Zuyun's forehead, he suddenly turned into a flash of lightning and disappeared on the spot. Teleport. Wenxiao was stunned. In the immortal world, due to the limitations of the immortal way, no immortal can teleport. And Zuyun's move was actually the thunder escape technique. When he appeared again, he was already behind Wenxiao. Suzaku Fist. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1656. Zuyun's fighting style is smooth and flowing. People in the fairy world cannot teleport, but Zuyun's thunder escape technique is in line with the law of thunder and lightning. Thunder and lightning are extremely fast. He has mastered this in the lower world and can be compared with teleportation. This sudden use naturally caught Wenxiao off guard. This punch hit him from behind, and the phantom of the vermilion bird had just appeared and had already entered Wenxiao's body. Huff! The chaotic fairy power quickly grew in Wenxiao's body, and his body was also stretched out. Go! Zuyun sneered and looked at the three women. Seeing that they had already been stunned, he just spit out a word, and his figure flashed, and he jumped directly from the ferry boat into the void. The ferry boat was still moving, but Zuyun's figure was gone. The three women came to their senses from the immortal boat. Jump quickly, it's going to explode. One of them screamed, not caring too much, and even without the protection of immortal power, she flipped directly from the immortal boat. But the immortal boat was very fast, and she was not prepared, and was thrown far away immediately. The other two women followed closely behind. Although they were only a breath away, they were scattered all over the world. After a few breaths, the immortal boat exploded and turned into a ball of fire. At the same time, it brought countless immortal power turbulence to scatter, and the aftermath lifted the three women who had just stabilized their bodies and were about to gather together. Zuyun glanced at them indifferently and found that their lives were not in danger. After being slightly frightened, he planned to return to the Zhongfang immortal realm to try the five elements and the law of gold to break the surface with a point, to see if he could break the immortal formation barrier of the Zhongfang immortal realm, and then make plans. Unexpectedly, the three women, after gathering, chased after him one after another. The speed was beyond Zuyun's expectation. Fairy friend, please stay. Fairy friend, we have nowhere to go now, can you take care of us? Yes, fairy friend, you destroyed the ferry boat, are you going to escort us to our destination? Zuyun thought that the three women came to him because of his strength and were worried about the safety of the universe. But he didn't expect that they would use such a ridiculous reason. Haven't you seen that I saved your life? If I had known this, I wouldn't have told them to run away. Zuyun is kind-hearted. But if he helped and saved this brainless woman, it is estimated that she would fall into the hands of others and be used by others, contributing a little to the destruction of the fairy world. Seeing these three women tightly blocking his way back, Zuyun crossed his arms and a sneer on his face. Then, he spat out a word, get lost. Zuyun, don't think that we are afraid of you just because you can kill two Wenxianyu friends. Yes, we finally took the initiative to talk to you, and you actually scolded us. Your application of the law of thunder and lightning is indeed good, but our speed is not slow. If you don't believe it, try it. Zuyun was simply amazed. They didn't think that they were able to kill two golden immortals because of their speed, right? Of course, their speed was indeed not slow. But his thunder escape technique was not as simple as they imagined. Glancing at them lightly, Zuyun said, I will go back to the central immortal realm. If you want to go back, follow me. If you don't want to go back, please do as you please. I am not the same kind of person as you. After that, he stopped talking nonsense, and his figure turned into a lightning again, and then disappeared from the spot. When he appeared again, he was already several miles away. In the fairy world, the pressure is many times heavier than that of the lower world. Therefore, the effect of using the corresponding magic skills may not be much better than that of the lower world. However, Zuyun did not take it to heart, because this was not just for him. Zuyun, don't be shameless. The three women saw that Zuyun was so unkind, and their pretty faces turned cold, and they vented all their anger on Zuyun. Let's go, stop him. You really don't know what's good for you. Isn't he going back to the central fairyland? Let's follow him and beat him up. The three women were simply like-minded, and they even forgot the experience of almost dying before, and hated Zuyun instead. With a flash of their bodies, they turned into streams of light and chased Zuyun closely, and they even had the momentum to surpass Zuyun's thunder escape technique. So fast. Zuyun glanced back and thought that since he couldn't get rid of them, he might as well give them a lesson they would never forget. I have important things to do, how could I waste time on you? Looking back, he saw an uninhabited fairyland, like a deserted island floating in the sea, and flew over without hesitation. Look, he's scared, he wants to hide in that deserted land. This uninhabited fairyland is called a deserted land by the people in the fairy world. Not to mention people, there are no living creatures. Generally speaking, under this situation, it means that this deserted land has no value at all. In the words of the lower world, even dogs don't come. There is no one in the deserted land. After entering, if the immortal way is not complete, he will have nowhere to run. One of the women showed excitement in her eyes. The reason why the deserted land is a deserted land is that the immortal way has been slightly affected. For example, immortal power cannot exist in this land, naturally no immortal things will grow, and the actual immortal creatures will not come here. In this case, this realm is desolate. If this is the case, Zuyun's thunder escape technique cannot be used, so won't they be able to control it? The three of them are good at the law of speed. Chase. Seeing Zuyun dive down, the three women were extremely excited and followed closely. It's past the agreed time, why did the two people from the Wen family break the appointment? In the fairyland, two Delugo Jinxian suddenly walked out of the darkness. This place is not far from the western fairyland. Maybe there was an accident. They have cooperated with us for many years, so they are not afraid to lie to us. Accidents are not terrible. What is terrible is that they were discovered by the people of the central fairyland. In this way, we have lost another line. Yes, something happened to the two people from the Wen family. I am afraid that it will affect other people in the central fairyland. Let's go and have a look. Let's go. The two Delugo Jinxians disappeared into the void again and moved forward. Finally, they arrived at the place where the ferry boat exploded. Countless debris, turbulent immortal energy, and fragments of bones. Something happened. Someone blew up their immortal boat. A Delugo Jinxian found a fragment of a middle-grade immortal crystal. After careful inspection, he found that there was still immortal energy inside. This piece should be a middle-grade immortal crystal used as energy. Even the middle-grade immortal crystal was destroyed. Could it be that the inspectors of the northern immortal realm found it? Only they can do such a big thing. I don't know, but we can look for it. If someone from the northern immortal realm took action, it means that the problem is not serious. If someone from the central immortal realm took action, we should also adjust our plan. Don't ruin the good things of the immortal emperor. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1657. In order to find the murderer who bombarded the immortal boat, the two Delugo Jinxian continued to move forward. They have a fixed route with the two golden immortals named Wen. This is also a route that can avoid the patrol envoys of the northern fairyland and is not easy to be discovered. Now that the ferry boat was destroyed and two people died, they needed to find information from it. The northern immortal territory occupies several medium-grade fairy crystal mines, which is really enviable. A Delugo Jinxian was flying while paying attention to the surrounding situation in Huanyuzhang. Indeed, another person said, Our western immortal territory is also a little poorer, and the immortal emperor has no choice but to dig out those low-grade immortal crystals. Unfortunately, the manpower is not enough, and now we have to increase the amount of mining. Maybe he will take action against the southern immortal territory, right? It is said that the immortal emperor heard reliable news that the southern immortal emperor, Nangong Tianli, has fallen. This rumor has been circulating in the fairy world for a long time, and now it is suddenly spread. Is it not someone else's conspiracy? Do you think our immortal emperor is so gullible with other people's words? I heard, his friend Five Elements Xianxia told him. You know, Five Elements Xianxia grew up wearing the same pants as our immortal emperor. Not an exaggeration. Five Elements loose immortal. Is he out of seclusion? Should we be out of seclusion? How can we dare to approach such a powerful immortal lord? That's right, let's finish the things at hand first. If the immortal emperor can take over the southern immortal territory, we might also be promoted to a higher level by then. Yes, we, the immortal emperor, still value our own people relatively highly. Although the two of them kept talking, they never relaxed. Soon, they noticed several auras on this line. There are three ways, the law of wind, it should be what Wen Xiao said in advance. Make sure, where did you escape? Don't worry, it should be nearby. After the Deluo Jingxian finished speaking, he took out an immortal weapon, and saw the immortal light flowing between his forehead, and quickly transferred the immortal power to the immortal weapon. This immortal weapon is a palm tower. After the immortal power enters it, the palm tower leaves the hand and floats in the world, with the top of the tower tilting slightly towards one place. It seems to be a deserted place. Another Deluo Jingxian looked in the direction of the tower's top, with a golden light flashing in his eyes. He saw a continent far away, floating in the world. Go and have a look. Since they can survive, it means they must have seen what happened. We just need to determine who did it. Be careful and go there. If there are patrols from the northern immortal territory taking them there, it will be bad. Generally speaking, the inspection envoys of one side of the fairy land are also Deluo Jingxian, and what they do is shady. If it is exposed, the ironclad evidence will be strong, and it will probably attract strong condemnation from the two fairy land in the northeast. Nothing will happen to the Western Immortal Emperor at that time, but they will definitely be pushed out as scapegoats. Abandoning one's cultivation and becoming an ordinary immortal citizen is considered a light punishment. At worst, they may be killed directly, or captured and enslaved. This is really a life worse than death. There are too many mines in the Western fairyland. They have even seen countless miserable miners. Why are you following me? As soon as Zhu Yung settled down, he found three women following him closely. He crossed his arms over his chest and asked deliberately with a playful smile on his face. Zhu Yun, I'll give you one last chance to take us to the fairyland over there, and then everything will be easy to talk about. A woman stood up first and pointed at Zhu Yun with an extremely arrogant tone. Zhu Yun chuckled and said, "Why should I take you there? Who are you? What does it have to do with me? Don't be ungrateful. Do you know where this is?" Another woman said that they had just left the northern immortal realm and thought Zhu Yun was the same. "I don't know, do you know?" Zhu Yun's rhetorical question immediately made them choke on their words. This woman just wanted to suppress Zhu Yun's momentum so that he would submit, but unexpectedly, Zhu Yun easily resolved it without saying anything and returned the pressure to them. "You all know it, and you still ask me? If there is a problem here, go back to the Chinese immortal realm as soon as possible and find a reliable medical fairy. Don't come out and be betrayed without knowing it." Zhu Yun pointed to his temple and sneered unceremoniously. This undoubtedly angered the three women. "If you don't get a toast, you'll get a fine drink. Sisters, come on, let him know how powerful we are. Do you really think that you can deal with the three of us just because you attacked a golden immortal? At this point, they thought Zuyun had won through a sneak attack. Little did he know that Zuyun's preparation started from that verbal confrontation. These three people are so childish. Seeing how stubborn they were, Zuyun didn't bother to talk nonsense to them, so he simply punched them out. Suanwu Fist. This is the northern immortal realm, and Suanwu dominates the north, so he wanted to try it to see if there was any difference. Of course, this is also because Suanwu Fist does not focus on attack. But obviously, it is no problem to deal with the immortals in the same realm. This is the law of four images. The chaos immortal power jumped out of the fist and suddenly turned into a turtle head. The speed and momentum were so fast that the three women were caught off guard. They thought Zuyun would also dodge, and then looked for opportunities to sneak attack. But he didn't expect that Zuyun would take action so simply. The turtle head was like a spirit snake coming out of a cave, more like a long whip, swung over fiercely, like sweeping thousands of troops, directly throwing the three of them to the side, and they all fell flat on their faces. With your condition, are you worthy of fighting me? Zuyun was too lazy to pretend. Since he had already made a move, he was no longer polite and said sarcastically, otherwise, you should go home obediently and suckle your mother's milk for a few years before coming out. Outside the central immortal realm, it is not a place for you brainless women who have not even grown all their hair to break into. After saying that, he stepped up and turned to leave from the other side of the wilderness. Zuyun, don't go. You are also a sneak attack. Yes, if you have the guts, stay and fight the three of us to the death. Zuyun shook his head helplessly, stretched out his finger as a pen, and quickly drew it in front of him. In an instant, three trapped characters took shape, turned into three cages, and covered them. Heavenly Talisman. In the lower realm, they were actually slightly restricted by the way of heaven. But in the fairy world, Zuyun is the master of the chaos immortal force, which is simply indestructible to the true immortals of the same realm. How have the three women ever seen such a mysterious method? They were already trapped in it before they could react. Let us out. Let go. Zuyun, you will die. Zuyun scratched his ears. He had long passed the state of being affected by other people's words. He didn't take it to heart and turned away. But as soon as he went out from the other end of the wilderness, the two Xianxians rushed in and quickly found the three women. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1658. Xianxian, help me, Xianxian, help me. Seeing that the two people were Xianxian, the three women shouted at the top of their lungs and even extended their hands outside the fence. Is this a heavenly talisman? The two Xianxian didn't make any move, and one of them even recognized the origin of the cage. You can't be wrong, the other person said with a serious face. Purgatory Mountain is now floating in the northern fairyland, and there is no guarantee that their warden will not come over. But why would the warden take action against them? According to Wenxiao, these three female immortals have never seen the world, have never been out of the Chinese immortal realm, and may not even have heard of Purgatory Mountain. Perhaps they collided with the warden and were trapped here. This is not important. The two people did not pay much attention to the three women's calls for help. Instead, they were discussing the possibility of the incident. The important thing is, were Wenxiao and the others also killed by the warden? We can't guess it like this. Let's ask them. Anyway, we have to take them away to mine. Good. After the two reached a consensus, they stepped forward and found that the immortal power flowing in the Tianfu prison was not that strong, and they couldn't help but feel a little more reassured. At most, it's just a golden immortal, but it's possible to kill Wenxiao and the others. They looked at each other, and then one of them shouted and asked, why are you trapped here? Xianxian, Xianxian, one of the women said, save us, we are being harmed by evil people. Oh! bad guy? The Xianxian narrowed his eyes and continued, what kind of villain? Are there also villains in the northern immortal territory? Aren't they afraid of the patrol envoys of the northern immortal territory? Xianxia, we don't know what happened. Originally, we followed two seniors out to find a living to earn some immortal crystals to practice, but who would have thought that a gangster lurked on the immortal boat and walked with us, and finally got up out of greed. He killed the two seniors and took away their things. Yes, 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 they said freely. The ability to spread rumors casually was simply innate. This was also because they had suffered under Zuyun and hated them. He wanted to kill people and seize the treasure, so he took advantage of the two seniors to sneak up on the immortal boat from behind. Although the three of us were not as powerful as we still wanted to pursue them, but in the end we were trapped here by this mysterious magic. That villain, the bad guy, teased us a lot. And finally left. Yes, that villain has followed us from the Chinese immortal realm. He may have had a plan for a long time. Through the complaints of these three people, the two Xianxian also guessed something in their hearts. They were secretly shocked. Could it be that Purgatory Mountain and the Chinese immortal domain have joined forces? They are from the Western Immortal Emperor's palace, and they have been deceiving people from the Central Immortal Territory all year round. Naturally, they know that the Chinese Immortal Territory is not as chaotic as the rumors outside. On the contrary, they know the stability of the Chinese Immortal realm better than anyone else. This matter needs to be reported to the Immortal Emperor immediately. The two of them looked at each other and said, you three, we are the patrol envoys of the northern fairyland. We found traces of fighting here, so we pursued them. Now, since the villain has escaped into the north, in the immortal realm, we have the duty to bring him to justice. Naturally, the three of you will come with us as witnesses. Definitely follow you. Moreover, we originally planned to go to the northern fairyland to find a suitable livelihood. The three female fairies nodded repeatedly. Another Xianxian pretended to be profound and said, you cooperate with us, and we will introduce you to a better place when the time comes. Because of the Tianfu, they had already regarded Zuyun as a person from Purgatory Mountain. However, from the words of these three people, it seems that the other party did not do it to trick people out. The two of them, Wen Xiao, had made a lot of middle-grade immortal crystals from them over the years. Perhaps the other party was revolting because of their wealth. In this case, they also breathed a long sigh of relief. They first brought the three women to the mine, and then passed the news to the immortal Luo Tian who was in charge of them. The three women did not know that no matter how they smeared Zuyun, they could not change the fact that they became minors, and they were even complacent about the other party's promise. After the immortal power on the Tianfu prison gradually dissipated, the two Xianxian also smashed the fence and rescued the three women. Then a ferry boat was sacrificed and led them towards the west. At the same time, after Zuyun realized that no one was following him, he continued towards the Chinese immortal realm. But before he got close, he suddenly noticed a ray of fairy light coming towards him. The target was clear and the aura of immortal power was locked on him. Zuyun felt it carefully and found no murderous intent, so he simply stopped. A moment later, a handsome man stood not far from him, holding an immortal soul hammer. It's actually you. Before Zuyun could say anything, the person who came hit Zuyun with a hammer. Yeah Yuan, how the hell did you say hello like this? Zuyun cursed loudly, then turned around and took out his immortal soul hammer from the center of his eyebrows, and also smashed it. You have a hammer, don't I? Boom. The two hammers smashed together, and Zuyun flew backwards without any suspense. Lightning flashed all over his body and his hair stood up. Ha ha ha, your hammer doesn't work. Ya Yuan laughed loudly, and then flew forward again, looking at Zuyun with excitement on his face. You can't do it, neither can your whole family, Zuyun cursed. I am a real immortal, how about you? You are a Xianxian, right? Of course, Ye Yuan said proudly, how talented am I? Moreover, I have a background in the immortal world. I only have my back, Zhu Yun cursed, but I heard that your father seems to be crazy. Why don't you go to the central immortal realm, but stay in the northern immortal realm? Looking at Ye Yuan's clothes, he asked in confusion, and he became the inspector of the northern immortal realm. Well, it's a long story. Ye Yuan sighed, and was stopped by Zhu Yun. Then don't say it. Ye Yuan choked and stared. I want to go to the central immortal realm, will you go? Can you get in? Ye Yuan was stunned. Nonsense, I just came out of the central fairyland, but I was almost cheated. Cheated? Hearing Zhu Yun's words, Ye Yuan couldn't help but look up and down, and said, how could such a smart person like you be cheated? Not really, Zhu Yun smiled, and said, the main thing is that I used a trick to see how others entered and exited the central fairyland freely. I just thought of a way, so I killed the 2 golden immortals, and then came back to try it, and then I met you. Good guy, Ye Yuan praised, and said, you can kill people with higher realms than you in Huangmingxing. Now in the fairyland, you still have the same character. You are just a true immortal, but you can kill a golden immortal. Awesome. Zhu Yun showed a half smile, I have also killed a Deluo golden immortal, do you believe it? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1659. You killed a Xianxian. Ye Yuan naturally didn't believe it, but his body honestly took a few steps back. Zhu Yun immediately became happy when he saw it, but after laughing, he also put away his expression and said, I'm going to the Chinese immortal realm, will you go? I can't get away for the moment, Ye Yuan spread his hands and said, but I can go and see with you. There is a barrier in the Chinese immortal realm, and my mother can't undo it. Your mother? Zhu Yun was stunned. Yes, my mother is hiding in the northern immortal realm now. Otherwise, I would still be here as an inspector of Xianxia, wouldn't it be to take care of my mother? Seeing Ye Yuan's helpless tone, Zhu Yun frowned and said, let's talk about your mother's affairs later. Why can't you go to the Chinese immortal realm? I am Deluo Jinxian, and I don't know what the situation in the Chinese immortal realm is now. It's okay for people from the lower immortal realm to enter, but if you go to the upper immortal realm, who knows what will happen. That immortal formation is to prevent us from going up to the immortal realm. Where's the fairy? Zhu Yun said in surprise, but you are Ye Yang's son, the legitimate immortal prince of the Chinese immortal domain. Hey, Ye Yuan didn't care about this identity at all, but asked, tell me, who knows me, the prince of the Chinese immortal realm? Zhu Yun suddenly realized, slapped his forehead and said, yes, you were born in Huangxingxing. So, Ye Yuan spread his hands and said, now in the entire fairy world, only my mother can recognize me. Zhu Yun smiled and said, what, you still have a foxtail? Ye Yuan curled his lips and said, can you stop being so ignorant? My mother had already survived the demon saint's calamity and became an adult when she was in the lower world. Where did she get the foxtail? I was also born to her in 10 months of pregnancy. They are connected by blood, she can naturally feel it. That's true, Zhu Yunshan agreed and motioned for Ye Yuan to follow. The two of them went to the Chinese immortal realm together and exchanged a lot of information. The Chinese immortal realm does not seem to be as stable as it appears on the surface. At least, Ye Yuan didn't dare to trespass, so he knew something about it. In addition, he also learned that Qiu Linjian was seriously injured. Although he was still in the realm of the immortal lord, he had to hide in the northern immortal realm to recuperate. Now Ye Yuan is an immortal general guarding this place, while Qiu Linjian is taken care of by Lu Ruyan. By the way, have you seen Qiniang? When talking about Lu Ruyan, Zuyun couldn't help but think of Sun Qiniang. My seventh sister, I haven't seen you. Why, she has also ascended to the immortal world. Maybe she appeared in the ascension pool of a certain immortal realm. Ye Yuan also looked confused, but suddenly asked, do you know that my seventh sister has ascended? He and Sun Qiniang had agreed to use the immortal voice talisman as soon as they ascended to the immortal realm. The purpose was also to prevent her from being trapped in any immortal realm. If he went to greet him by himself, the other party would surely be able to give him some face. It's just that Ye Yuan himself didn't expect that the fairy world would change so drastically. His father would go crazy and his mother would be seriously injured. However, if Sun Qiniang really sends news, he will definitely go. I didn't see her ascend with my own eyes, Zuyun sighed and said. Huang Mingxian collapsed. To be honest, I don't even know whether she is dead or alive. The yellow star collapsed. Ye Yuan was suddenly shocked, his face full of disbelief. Yes, it collapsed. At that time, all the tribulation transcending monks ushered in the catastrophe and then ascended. As for the rest of the monks, Zuyun originally wanted to say that he was included in the world of the universe, but when the words came to his lips, he swallowed them back and said, there is nothing you can do. Seventh sister. Ye Yuan murmured and suddenly said, Zuyun, I will go back to my mother to find a way to confirm whether Qiniang is really dead or alive. I will not accompany you to the Chinese immortal realm. After saying that, he put away the immortal soul hammer, then took out another immortal jade, and said, if you want to contact me and transfer your immortal consciousness into it, I will reply to you at a convenient time after I receive the message. Zuyun quickly took it and said, does your mother have a way to find someone? If possible, he would of course want to find Mengwei through Qiu Linjian. This is not impossible, Qiu Ling realm is the realm of the immortal lord. Besides, it's just that he was injured and couldn't use the law. The immortal power and realm still exist. How can it be so easy? Ye Yuan smiled bitterly and said, it's because the immortal talisman I gave Kime was given by my mother. She can determine the location of the immortal talisman. Zuyun was immediately disappointed, but it was not unacceptable. After all, he would not have had such thoughts without meeting Ye Yuan. In that case, we'll see you later. Zuyun handed over his hand, and Ye Yuan did the same. Say hello to Fairy Lu for me. Yes. The two parted ways, with Ye Yuan going back to find Qiu Linjian, and Zuyun heading straight to the border between the two immortal realms. Just when he was about to let the chaos immortal power transform its attributes into the metal immortal power, he suddenly stopped in his hand. If the calm in the Chinese immortal realm is also the prelude to the storm, will it be unnecessary for me to go back? After pondering for a moment, Zuyun thought of the three female fairies in his mind, and said to himself, ask them for some information. If you don't obey, I'll give them a hard time. Therefore, Zuyun immediately turned back and used the thunder escape technique to rush towards the desolate place. Knowing that this border was guarded by Ye Yuan, he didn't have any scruples. He saw the desolate area again in just a few hours as quickly as possible and plunged into it. When he fell and found that the cages of the heavenly talisman that had trapped the three women were all gone, Zuyun was dumbfounded. It's impossible. They are only at the realm of true immortals, and they have little experience. They can't even recognize the heavenly talisman. How can they break it so easily? Knowing that they are very fast, Zuyun used the heavenly talisman. According to their realm, it would take at least a day to unlock it. But at this time, there was no trace of the breath of chaos immortal power in the wilderness, which means that it had dissipated early. Impossible, they have no ability to break the heavenly talisman, unless someone comes. Zuyun's heart condensed, and he immediately looked at the place where the three people had stood before. Sure enough, he found two pairs of completely different footprints. It's a man's footprint. He can easily break my heavenly talisman, at least he is a Xianxian. Could it be that he is the person who contacted Wen Xiao and the others? Zhu Yun frowned deeply, but he had no intention of rescuing the three of them. Instead of taking the risk of dealing with the Xianxian, it would be better to return to the northern immortal realm to inquire about the news. But chasing to the wilderness for three female immortals, I'm afraid things are not that simple. Let's leave first. Those two people are definitely not from the northern immortal realm. They left the central immortal realm and headed west. Could it be the western immortal realm's doing? Thinking of this possibility, Zhu Yun couldn't help but take a breath. For the sake of minors, he got involved in the central immortal realm. How big a move is this western immortal emperor? Zhu Yun had nowhere to go for the time being, so he found a corner in the wilderness, and then plunged into the world of the universe. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1660. Can't we enter the Chinese immortal realm? Meng Wei looked at Situ Ching Chen. If he could pass through the Chinese immortal realm, he could save a lot of time. But at this time, they were clearly approaching the Chinese immortal realm, but Situ Ching Chen signaled that they would take a detour. It's not that we can't get in, it's that it's easy for us to get in and hard to get out. Situ Ching Chen smiled bitterly and said, Fairy Meng, if you can get in and out easily, why would I take a detour to the southern fairyland? Hearing this, Meng Wei couldn't help but wonder, you came from the northern immortal realm. If you went to the eastern immortal realm, the two realms must be next to each other, right? But why did you go around to the southern immortal realm again? They were completely opposite, which made Meng Wei wonder whether Situ Ching Chen had other things he was hiding from him and Zhu Yun. Well, it's a long story. Situ Ching Chen smiled bitterly and said, to sum up, there are immortal envoys in the north, and the immortal envoys among them were bribed by outsiders. I'm not sure whether he destroyed us. The Situ family has connections, so I chose to take a detour just in case. So, Meng Wei stared at Situ Ching Chen and said, if we want to go back, we have to go through the western immortal realm. That's not necessary, Situ Ching Chen said. Firstly, I am returning to the northern immortal realm, and secondly, I don't know what happened in the western immortal realm, so I can just go directly through the eastern immortal realm. Something happened in the western immortal territory, and they just ran out of the mine where the western immortal territory belongs. If we run over again, if we run into those Xianxian and Xianxian again, wouldn't there be no place to run? Then what happened in the Chinese immortal realm? What does it mean to be easy to enter and difficult to exit? The Chinese immortal emperor is crazy, who knows what's going on inside, so don't go in if you can. Situ Ching Chen sighed and said, actually, my family once said that the Chinese immortal realm is not as simple as it seems on the surface, but I don't know the specific reason. In this case, it's better for us to stay away. Besides, we are just going to look for Zhu Xianxia, there is no need to get involved in right and wrong. Meng Wei chose to believe Situ Ching Chen's words, turned towards the east, and said, in that case, let's go east. Just right. Situ Ching Chen breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, he had no intention of harming Meng Wei, but he was just afraid that Meng Wei would doubt him. Over in the eastern immortal realm, he really needed help, but some things had not yet been settled, and he didn't know how to start. In-laws are real. But the Situ family was destroyed. This matter is also very relevant. Now, in the entire immortal world, he is the only one named Situ. Just when Situ Ching Chen was about to leave with Meng Wei, the sound of fighting suddenly came from where they were standing on the wall of the formation. I saw a ray of light from a flaming sword that belonged to the realm of the northern immortal realm, piercing through the world. At the same time, behind her, there were two Delugo golden immortals chasing after her. What a powerful fairy sword energy! The formation wall was transparent, and Situ Qingchen could see the fierce power of the fire sword at a glance. At the same time, the man stepped on the fire wheel and walked through the sky towards here. Meng Wei also looked over. It was a bit far away, and she was not very advanced, so naturally she couldn't see clearly. But vaguely, I just felt that it looked familiar, and I subconsciously used the magic eye. Seeing this, her expression changed drastically. Situ, can you help me? Meng Wei has already wielded the power of the holy demon in her hands, but unfortunately she doesn't have the demonic sword in her hand, so she can only use the spiritual fire symbiosis technique. But her body is still a demon. Although she can control a certain amount of immortal power, she is not recognized by the immortals in this regard, so it is difficult to use effective methods. The body has not been tempered by immortal light. It has not yet condensed into immortal consciousness. Spiritual fire is still spiritual fire. It is extremely difficult to hurt an immortal, or a Delugo Jin immortal. You know her. Situ Qingchen couldn't see the person coming clearly, but judging from the current situation, the owner of the sword light would definitely die. Not only do I know him, but Zuyun also knows him. Meng Wei bit his lip and said anxiously, if Zuyun knew that you would not save her until death, I'm afraid. You really are, Situ Qingchen gritted his teeth and said, that is Delugo Jinxian. Just tell me, do you want to help? You are not from the Northern Immortal Realm. Are you still afraid that the Northern Immortal Realm will cause trouble for you? Besides, the Northern Immortal Emperor is crazy, but he can't bear grudges. And you are an Eastern Immortal. The Emperor's future consort. Situ Qingchen said helplessly, you have said so, what else can I do? Let's go. At worst, we will find a way out of the Central Immortal Territory and go directly to the Northern Immortal Territory. After that, he took a step forward, and without any obstruction at all, he passed directly into the Northern Fairyland. Meng Wei was stunned and followed in. Situ Qingchen said it was easy to get in but hard to get out, but he didn't expect it to be so easy to get in. Wei. When the man saw Situ Qingchen, he thought he was the helper of the two pursuers behind him. But when I saw Meng Wei following closely behind me, I couldn't help but be surprised and happy. Qiniang, don't panic. Meng Wei gave a sweet shout and threw the spiritual fire in his hand towards Sun Qiniang. Then she turned to Situ Qingchen and said, aren't you going to take action? Coming. Situ Qingchen's heart was bleeding. To Delugo Jinxian. Where is his opponent? He could only use his ancestral means, and then hinder the two Delugo Jinxians, and finally take that Qi Niang and escape to a fairyland. At this time, he also saw that Sun Qi Niang was only in the realm of true immortals. It was not easy for her to escape from the siege of two Delugo Jinxians. Want to kill her back? Impossible. Situ Qingchen quickly took out two middle-grade fairy crystals from the jade pendant, and after reciting a fairy formula, the fairy crystals turned into majestic fairy power, forming two nets of heaven and earth, covering the other party. Before it took effect, Situ Qingchen shouted, Fairy Qi Niang, run, I can't control them for long. Sun Qi Niang first grabbed a flame thrown by Meng Wei with one hand and swallowed it directly into her mouth. She knew what Meng Wei meant. This spiritual fire was to replenish the fire power consumed in her body. Sun Qi Niang merged with the 7 phoenix pearls, and there was phoenix fire in her body, which also carried the power of the phoenix bird. Although rebirth from the fire is impossible, swallowing spiritual flames to heal wounds can have a certain effect. Wei, let's talk about the past later. Sun Qiniang shouted tenderly. A smile appeared on her pretty face, but she suddenly turned around. You have been chasing me for so long, and you still want to trick me into mining for you? Do you really think I just came from the lower world and am a girl who knows nothing? After the voice fell, Sun Qinyang stabbed out with a sword. Ang. Clang. Dragon roar and phoenix roar. Sun Qinyang's sword actually has the sounds of two kinds of mythical beasts. And that sword stabbed out, showing both dragon power and phoenix shadow.